Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Minh, and I'm your host from the SDA Housing Podcast. And you're listening to the SDA Podcast, which is a show that explains, highlights, guides, and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today, we have a fantastic speaker, a guest speaker here, Sean Kirkland from FORMSPACE. Sean, how are you?
Hey, mate. Yeah, look, I'm doing well, mate. Thank you.
Thank you for coming onto our show. We first connected about late November last year when you were on your way, maybe December, when you're on your way overseas. You mentioned that you were a big fan of the podcast show, and we've been talking ever since, mate. So welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure. Look, when I'm away abroad, I tend to listen to a lot of podcasts and wanted to hear more about the SDA space and what other, I guess, pioneers are doing. And yeah, mate, I've been listening ever since.
Have you enjoyed the show the last 6 months, 7 months?
Mate, yeah, definitely. When I had the opportunity to sit down and actually listen to it in detail, but yeah, look, by all means, and I want to sort of acknowledge both yourself and Deb. Like, it's very impressive to see, I guess, the level of information that you guys convey to the audience. And mate, yeah, I just really tip my hat to both you and Deb in terms of not only the podcast, but what you've created in general in terms of awareness to the SDA space.
Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate our fanboys calling us up and saying hello.
Oh, mate, that's me. Definitely waving your flag there, mate. Yeah.
So listen, today we want to ask you a few questions about you as a SDA Building Designer, as a provider as well. Your thoughts on the marketplace, your experience, your history, your background, where you're going. Just hear your thoughts, generic questions that I'm sure that we would all love to know more about you as a build designer and how you got to the space of NDIS. Let's start with a few questions first. So, Sean, please introduce yourself. What's your history? Why did you decide to join or get into specialize in SDA? And what insight do you have to offer?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Sean. I'm a registered provider for the NDIS. And if I wind the clock back to 2017, 2018, when there was, I guess, a flurry in terms of the NDIS or SDA space, in terms of the reform and things that come online during that period, I was exposed to what I would sort of term as poor design practice out there in the industry. I saw a lot of SDA builds being built that I would consider being, I guess, a Band-Aid solution, be it that they were sort of quite a temporary solution to getting participants out of aged care facilities. And whilst some of the product that was being built just wasn't what I would consider being fit for purpose housing outcomes, I guess, an ethos or motto that I've tried to live by. And so if I separate my, I guess, ego aside a little bit, I acknowledge that myself professionally can design pretty well. And so I got exploring the SDA space, and one thing led to another. Opportunities arose, learnings arose, and it made me very, very interested within the space because ultimately I cared. I care about the product that I deliver. So that led me to looking into becoming a registered provider for the NDIS, and that was, I think, at around 2018, 2019, and that was quite a long process, probably about a year and a half of auditing, applying to Queensland government for a yellow card, police background checks, the whole shebang. But my intention there was to really sort of signal to the industry or the construction industry at large that, I was backing this space and I was sort of backing myself essentially. And that was not a cheap exercise or cheap endeavor. And so, yeah, after a year and a half, I ended up becoming a registered provider for the NDIS and probably one of only a handful in Queensland at the time. I'm not sure what the industry is like now, but having gone down that path, that then led me to many different opportunities. And then equally backed, I have a medium-rise building design license, which is, I guess, a higher grade license compared to other building designers. So that gives me the scope or opportunity to design SDA spaces within apartments, townhouses, multi-residential and residential homes. And I guess that's, a bit of a sort of sneak insight into, or short insight into my background. Yeah.
Sean, can I ask you, why as a building designer did you feel like you needed to become a registered provider? And if so, what kind of provider? Because there's obviously civil providers and SDA providers. Just so our listeners can understand, why does a build designer like you need or want?
Well, I wanted to be affiliated with being a provider in order to better tie into, I guess, my intention in terms of designing within this space. And so I guess a lot of people can claim to design within this space, but may not have the particular experience. And so being recognized as a provider, my intention is to show to the industry that, hey, look, I'm here. I've learned a significant amount about, I guess, the design and SDA space, all the intricacies, I guess, that's involved within designing. And try and use that to leverage in order to win work and give back to community, essentially, purpose. And so, yeah, mate, hopefully that's a little bit of an insight.
Sean, my next question is qualifications. Are there many build designers specializing in SDA, and or when does a client not go to an architect? And is it common to come across architects specializing in SDA versus also access consultants? So architects specializing in SDA, access consultants versus building designers in SDA like you. Can you please elaborate on the differences between those two or three scenarios?
Yeah, okay. So for the first point, I believe there are a number of different building design firms in Queensland, across Australia, that now specialise in SDA, equivalent to, I guess, the services that I provide. I guess from my experience, without going into too much detail, the role of a building designer is not just designing a home. I could talk from my own experience or background, but when I went through, I guess, my bachelor's degree of building design, I done that separate whilst working full time. And what that allowed me was the opportunity to go on site in my early days, I guess, nearly every day. And what it taught me was the fundamentals about construction, really, an opportunity that I guess sitting in a classroom or doing online courses don't give you. And so in my early days, I was able to establish real world conditions pretty quickly and how that correlates then to design. And this is where I think it differs in the marketplace, in the sense of people that demonstrate the skill set in order to be able to design within SDA. And so some other designers, and I'll use the banner, I guess, designer openly, because you have draftspeople, building designers, and other professions that fall under that category, may not have the same, I guess, real world experience, I guess, as what I do. And then, I see that as being the critical point in why I'm able to design pretty well in this space. It's just the whole host of the building methodology behind it. In regards to the other question, an access consultant really is assessing the plans that we provide or that I provide. So yeah, hopefully that gives some insight.
Yeah, thanks for that. Can you give me some examples of your work you've done over the last few years within the NDIS space, please?
Yeah, so look, it's hard to put a number, but it'll be well north of 100 now. A lot of them are completed. So I've designed apartments, villas, I guess, quote unquote, residential homes or shared home models. Yeah. Sorry, what was the second question? My mind went blank Friday afternoon.
The question was, give us some examples of the jobs you've been working on the last few years around Australia.
Yeah, okay. Yep. So varying degrees of different SDA design categories, high physical support, fully accessible, improved livability. So I've done a intentional community down in Adelaide, an apartment building. I've got some work down in Victoria at the moment, a combination of robust housing, villas, a unique, I guess, MTA, STA and SDA, so medium-term accommodation, short-term accommodation, and SDA, specialist disability accommodation in New South Wales. And then, I guess, some villa projects, a few different bits and pieces across the southeast.
Fantastic. My next question is, how do you stay updated with industry collaboration and workshops?
So, I drop in with pioneers like yourself. So I've been to a couple of your seminars now, and that allows me to hear from other professionals, I guess, the movement in the SDO space. And so that allows me to be hopefully a few steps ahead in terms of leveraging that advice or just things that people may indirectly say in some of those seminars that sort of make me reflect and think, when I'm designing this space, I could, I take on the advice that I hear within these seminars. Beyond that, I try to stay updated with obviously the latest SDA standards. And then we're also operating or designing in a world where we've had significant NCC changes come online over the past 12 months. So, there's a real sort of kaleidoscope of different points of information that are coming in at any one point.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for the feedback there. What considerations do you take as part of the designing projects?
Oh, it's a very good question.
And I know every project is different,
Yes.
Your villas, your houses, your medium-rise complexes. But how do you begin the process?
Well, for me, my intention is to listen to clients, in particular, the demands and needs of the participants first. What I'm trying to do in my mind is hear the feedback of, I guess, the participants and their wants and needs within these spaces. I'm also listening to, I guess, the client direction and advice. First and foremost, I try to bed down with them an exacting brief of what they're wanting to do. And over the best part of this year and late last year, I was really leveraging professionals like yourself to substantiate my outcome for these clients. And what that means to me is to let them engage the services of someone like yourself and Deb to establish a pretty clear direction in terms of what they're wanting based off their budget and a whole range of different outcomes, be it if it's an investment model, what their long-term strategy is, et cetera, et cetera. From that, we consolidate a brief pretty quickly, and that then triggers me to often engage external consultants, be it in Queensland in particular, to establish a preliminary assessment report based off their site. What that report does is it establishes all the key parameters to design within that I can table with the client. So we know we're doing, if I use this example, let's say we're doing a group home model and it's a 2-bedroom model and an OOA, then we know it's still likely to be a Class 1B dwelling under 300 square metres. We have a report from a certifier, and that certifier notes, look, designed within XYZ of setbacks, heights, any overlays that may be pertinent to it. And so we're able to consolidate that design process pretty quickly or in a shorter period of time because we know we're designing within the framework of, I guess, what the certifier notes as part of his assessment. And so equally at the same time, client still has some input in terms of what they're wanting it to look like visually, but I tend to give guides or suggestions based off orientation or things that may be particular to that site. And then we begin the journey of going down the concept design. And so that's a process of, I guess, formulating all of those ideas, all those open discussions, all the, I guess, words that get exchanged in those reports. And then we tend to come around to a concept design and workshop that with the client until, I guess, they're satisfied. And as I'm sort of, I guess, speaking, if you feel free to sort of jump in, Minh, if you have any questions as to
Sure.
as to what I'm sharing. at that stage, I guess after the concept design's done and the clients are satisfied with it, it's usually an opportunity then for other stakeholders to come in. So an access consultant, a reassessment from a certifier. And this is the variables really the development type. And I'm only speaking from a 2-bedroom group home model here. But if it was an apartment or something much larger, then the list of external consultants that need to have their say at concept design is quite important. So yeah, it arrows off to an access consultant, and a big shout out to Jeremy Soden. I'm a huge fan of his work. We've been working together for a couple of years now. He owns Forward Access Consulting up in Brisbane, and he provides generally an initial assessment, and within that's usually RFIs for things that get resolved as we move through the motion of working drawings and preliminary design. But he does cast his eye over the concept design, and generally we're about 95% there. There may be, some changes of some things that we need to do.
Yeah, gotcha. We interviewed Jeremy Sodden last year. He's a great.
I listened to it.
Very, very good at. Yeah, he's very good at what he does.
Yeah.
And can you explain to our listeners the role of an SDA assessor in working with you, please?
Yeah. So I would say that the access consultant's probably up there as number one in terms of the relationship in that SDA design to build process. He works indirectly with me through the various stages of the design to build process, through concept design, preliminary design, and working drawings. So he provides an assessment, and then at the end of it, upon completion of working drawings or construction drawings, he rubber stamps it as being compliant, an LHA certification, and a certification overall for the plans, and then that gets submitted. And then during the process of construction, they also involve at staged points during the construction process, so frame stage, practical completion, etc. And they also work indirectly, with the builder in that approval process.
Gotcha. The next question is, Sean, what strategies do you employ to optimize the functionality and the usability of spaces for individuals with disabilities in projects? Because I've spoken with another designer 2 years ago about space being such an important part. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about space, please. Spacing.
Well, I mean, that's a pivotal name to my own business, Form and Space. And so the two are very important in that question. What I would typically signal back to is the SDA design category that we're actually looking to achieve. Because under each of those different subsegments of the SDA banner provide little items of gold to design around. So if I use, let's say, high physical support as an example, there's things that I try to build into the design to make it ergonomically flow a lot easier for the participant and the carer living within that space. So these may be items in terms of general orientation of the bedrooms and the en-suites, where they are on the floor plan, whether it's passive surveillance overlooking a street, passive solar design, northeastern aspect, cross-flow ventilation. I mean, they're key sort of formulas in any design. That's not just sort of localized SDA. But in terms of the SDA and the category, that's, again, where I'm working in with the provider to hear what they really want from the participant in the space. And so I tend to entertain ideas for them. And so a lot of the designs that I've been doing recently have included items like wheel-in robes, and that makes it a lot easier for carers to bathe and maneuver participants in their own spaces in the bedrooms. Or it might be an instance where on the alfresco, for instance, we use upgraded brick in order to create a sensory enhancement. Or it could be things like vaulted ceilings, skylights, things that sort of, I guess, affect the subconscious a little deeper, where our emotions sort of interact with homes and our built environment. So, yeah, there's a lot of different things that we can try to incorporate in the design. I've got a project in Port Macquarie at the moment that's just about finished construction. The comments there in that general community in Port Macquarie was the SDA home that I designed, was like the Taj Mahal. So within it, we had things like full rake ceilings, rake rafted ceilings, skylights, wheel end robes, built-in study desks for the participants, mosaic face brick on the alfresco, wheel up veggie gardens. Yeah, so there's a lot that we try to incorporate into those designs. And then on top of that, really looking at the design topology, and by that I mean as this space evolves, and it has done for the last 12 months quite quickly, I've really reflected on how participants live and interact in these spaces, and they're really wanting their own individual spaces. So I've been starting to really fuse the gap of the villa and the shared home model by introducing plan ranges that are essentially two villas, but still under a Class 1B under 300 square metres. And so they're single bedrooms with a little study for mum and dad or siblings to come and stay. And they're really sort of find that middle gap there where participants aren't having to live on top of each other and they have their own spaces. And it doesn't take much to design this stuff, just a level of thought and awareness behind the intent, which is fit for purpose housing. So, yeah, hopefully that answers some of the question.
Thank you so much for that. Now, moving on, what challenges do you normally come across when designing SDA? And how do you address them as well?
Oh, look, that's a good question. It's a very broad question, meaning, yeah, that there's lots of different things that arise during the process. One of the main ones, or one of the big things that I've come across that make me sort of reflect deeper about the services that I provide is I see a lot of issues where designs are non-compliant in a whole multitude of ways, where it speaks to me that designers or the alike don't actually understand what's happening here, like what the process is. And I could rattle off a number of them. So, for example, brick veneer construction, where a hob is then needing to be allocated for perimeter pass, where you can't have, in order to get your DPC, your damp-proof course and your visual inspection on side pass and ramping. And by that, I mean, I've seen a lot of designs come through, or designers, should I say, where they haven't been mindful of the perimeter pathing and bump it to the brick veneer, and then your weep holes and your DPC and your termite inspection are non-compliant and not to Australian standards. And so there's things like this where I'm quite aware of that, where you would then allow for 100 mil higher hob to sit the brickwork higher and sit the frame higher, but that can lead to penetration or errors in that hob down the track. And so it could be as simple as suggesting a Hebel power panel on the external frame construction, for instance, where you can get zero threshold abutments to that wall. I mean, that's just a small example. You've got a whole host of other things, like, for example, your threshold ramps into the doors, 35 mil step downs, needing performance solutions with deep satisfy provisions. Yeah, so there's a whole host of issues I see in terms of the buildability aspect that then become an issue later on, where, for example, I've taken over jobs where clients have gotten a design done and I can see the whole host of issues where basically we're starting again and, moving through the motion in terms of compliant design.
Okay, that's good. Good to hear that you can pick up other people's messes when you're coming into the halfway through it. Do you ever get challenges with actual customers who try to interfere with the design process with too much input and stuff they don't know about to may derail or slow the process down, you know?
Yeah, this is quite an important part. In the SDA space, I try to suggest that there's two different types of clients, I guess you would say, or even more. You have builders and developers that, I guess, allow free reign and they trust your professional advice and your judgment within that design to build process. And it's a lot easier to move through the motions. When, I guess it's a mum and dad first time looking into the SDA space and the design journey, it's important to separate, I guess, emotions out of the equation and allow that design to build process to occur organically with said professionals. The reason is there's a whole secondary host of elements that are coming together when, I guess, I present a design. And so clients don't, if they're emotionally charged in that process and not understanding that, you'd need to create some dissidence because it's not a standard residential house, or we're not designing a home specifically for yourself. And there's no easy answer to it. I think what I've come to learn is it's just boundary setting and just sort of having to police that and then share that. A client, if I can educate the client on the process, then at the end of the day, ultimately, the decision-making's in their hand. But I try to, I guess, avoid that because there's a whole host of things as to why a design is where it's at, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Certainly does. Another question I have is technology. How big is the need for technology as a tool in your discipline of design work?
Yeah, look, this is a massive point. I guess I'll start off by, I just wanted to acknowledge Jeremy Soden again, because he sent me a message earlier in the week, having conducted an assessment on one of my plans, and said, that it was one of the best designs that he'd seen. And what it speaks to me is that a lot of people only see lines on a paper, and what people don't realize, I guess, is a real value in building systems that reflect, I guess, this. And an example of this, I guess, is I've spent tens of thousands of dollars probably over the last 12 to 18 months. Shout out to Gavin Cramp from Aussie BIM Guru. He's assisted me in building. I use Autodesk Revit in the production of my work, and he's assisted me in building specific generic-based content that is parametric in the SDA space. So an example of this, again, a lot of people only see lines on a paper, but a door with its inherent circulation space around it that then generates if a wall's too close to another wall, or the detail in relation to the architraves and the door setouts and the way the door then interacts with the parallel wall. So I've literally spent a huge amount of money building systems in the background. And what it allows me then is to have a more organic approach to it rather than getting bogged down on the specifics of the detail in terms of plan creation. It's a little hard to explain, but I would dare say the systems that I built, I haven't observed the same level of parametric-based design in many other building design firms across Australia. And so my intention behind building this is to build good technology that allows that process to sharpen up. And what I've found is that I've then not needed to have an extra bum on seat or an employee, because I've had, I guess, a net positive result through the technology that I've built, where it's a lot quicker to design. And so I'll give an example. Most design firms, let's say we have a typical 1070 swinging door. In front of it needs to demonstrate compliance to circulation space. And a lot of design firms will then draw an element that shows a circulation space. If through the process then, and we're at working drawings, for instance.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Sean. Now, I think one of the last questions here is, how does a client or developer, how should they approach the design process before coming to you? I mean, should they have anything in their mind with how the process should be, or what's in their head, or they come to you with a blank canvas? How should the process become?
Well, the process is all about education, and this is where I try to steer these clients to someone like yourself. Now, I won't sort of preach or say that I know absolutely everything about SDA. I definitely do not. But what I do know is the SDA design space very well. And so I like to position these clients to sit within, I guess, yourself and Deb's domain to work out their needs and wants that they want to extract from the development or from a project within the framework of your advice. And so I guess I send them to you guys to get educated on all of it. Generally, they then would circle back to to myself. And then that's when we can start having some good questions about deliverability at process. But again, this SDA space is very broad and very open, meaning, when it comes to the selection of the topology, if it was a developer, for instance, and they wanted to do a townhouse or an apartment, then I'll probably have some more direct initial early on involvement or advice, because there's a whole subset of discussion points that we need to have. But if it's a mum and dad investor or someone that's green to the SDA space, I really am looking to position them to get advice and education from someone like yourself, for me then to then come in after that and then, really, I guess, materialize their vision.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. Me and Debbie, we've seen a shift in the marketplace the last few months. And the shift is a lot more sophisticated,
Designing
kind of clients.
Yes.
Educated. They're coming out of the woodworks now. They've been watching, reading, assessing, talking around, getting enough understanding of what SDA is all about, but they just can't go to the next level because there's only so much you can read at Google on your phone, right, on SDA. And they need that professional advice without being sold a product, right, to take their empty block of land to all their projects, all their DA sites to the next level. Because a lot of developers around Australia have sites which are DA approved for townhouses, for example, but they realise that they may not be able to maximise their profitability on that side of that. So they're looking at other options to redo the DA, subdivide the product or whatever. So we're seeing a lot more people come into the marketplace approaching ourselves here in Brisbane to seek advice. And we are happy to oblige because we're modifying our service now to be more of a fee-based business so that we're not being seen as flogging of products, so to speak.
Yes.
Giving value add, preliminary, pre-concept design advice to say, what do you want to achieve? Why are you doing this? Do you understand it? Do you know your options? Do you know the risks? The process is complex and long. Are you ready for the process? Who are you talking to? Do you want to be referred to the right people? So we're really taking them through that education process and asking the questions, why, the who, why, when, where, and how, the SWOT analysis. So we take them through that process in person, on the phone, on Zoom calls, and also in our masterclass, but also in our data reports as well. So we're doing recommendation reports, we're doing SWOT analysis, we give them in writing so that they are educated enough to go to the next level to engage a designer like you, Sean, to take advice, to go to concept stage and design stage. So the marketplace is shifting at the moment because, I don't know, maybe there's not enough stock to buy out there, not enough good stock or someone. But people are coming to the SDA world more educated now, and a lot more larger funds and family offices are coming out with money to look at higher spec'd out, high-end product in the SDA world after having seen a lot of the rubbish being built and the oversupply and the problems that occurred from the SDA for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So are you seeing the same thing you're in as well, Sean?
Yeah, look, 10,000%. And what we need to remember, or what I try to educate people on, this is a segment of society that's often forgotten about. But if you're in a wheelchair, I guess you're no different to you and I. You still have the same wants, desires, feelings, and emotions. And that's what's extremely important about the design of these spaces. And by all means, I'm seeing much more, and even the designs that I'm doing are much more discerning. They're sort of meeting market trends in terms of what I guess the masses, I guess what a lot of people are wanting. So, like things like curves and arches and some of the sex and sizzle elements that are coming through. There's no reason why we can't still include these within the SDA space. I mean, ABI Interiors have just released this beautiful range of interior joinery fit out that's AS 1428 compliant. And, we're talking things like nickel plated handles and brass tapware and brass grab rails. And these are things that really motivate me in terms of going to that next level of design. I've done a whole bunch of designs recently that sort of meet new market trends. So curves, arches, Venetian render, those real sex and sizzle elements that people are wanting from these from the building design. And so I know it is transformational for the end user, the end participant that's living in that space, because it really does affect these people, I believe, in a deeper level, like the subconscious, when you're then interacting with that space. And so it just really speaks into, I guess, quality of design and really good discerning design. And as I stated all along, I think everything pivots off a really good, high quality design. Everything really does. I mean, as a participant's going through each of these homes and then they step into a space that's, bigger than standard, it may not be obvious, but there's something that makes, I guess, people reflect and think, well, what's different about this design compared to, I guess, the 3 or 4 around the suburb? Well, it's because someone's taking that considered approach. They've looked at it from different angles. They've heard the advice from the carers, the participants, and then they've tried to manifest these spaces. Yeah, so like there's a lot of discerning type of product that's coming to the market, and that's really, I think, a reflection of quality designers that are really trying to push the boundaries or the envelope within this SDA space. And I'm certainly up there waving my flag, trying to pioneer the industry and push it forward through quality, I guess, built design. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really the ethos to FORMSPACE. That's why it's called FORMSPACE. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Sean, what's your way to de-stress then end the week normally? Because you doing your work is pretty high pressured and a lot of focus in your design work.
Yeah, look, I don't know if there's a silver bullet or this magical answer that can fix the real stress that comes with the role of I guess designing within these spaces and being a building designer in general and owning your own business and still managing life at the same time. But I like to think that in some regard I'm sort of self-aware, so I can feel when my energy is being depleted or I'm feeling exhausted. So, mate, I end up going to a float tank or a sauna or a cold plunge or something that just sort of grounds me a little bit, so that way I can still show up and come into myself and drop into the flow state when designing these spaces. That level of the mind that sort of really requires quietness and attention to sort of really, do these designs, if that makes sense.
Sean, thanks so much for that last answer there. Any final words of advice from you to anyone listening who is thinking about engaging designer or an architect or whatever to get a better gauge on whether their block or site is suitable for SDA and how to go about engaging the right professional for concept advice?
Yeah, I would look to an established portfolio of works that demonstrate a degree of competency within the outcome that you're seeking. So someone that's able to, I guess, show you through or show you examples of the product and the demonstrated history there. And yeah, I think it's also important to build that relationship, understand their intention, understand what they're sort of wanting from it, or their history in terms of coming into it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, everything's just about the heart. Like, I really care about these participants in these spaces, and that's what gets me out of bed at 6 o'clock each morning and pushes me ahead when I'm fatigued. And so trying to align yourself with people that sort of understand the industry, they get it, and they're wanting to sort of be there in that journey with you through the entire process, no matter, how choppy the waters can get, if that makes sense. Because it's not an easy process, and I can't sort of suggest that it's an easy process, because if it was, everyone would be doing it. There's challenges every single day, and no two projects are the same. And so just trying to align yourself with someone that understands it and understands the vision that you're wanting, has the appropriate knowledge and advice, and then just starting the journey from there, essentially.
Sean, thank you so much for your time. We'll be meeting up with you the next few weeks in Melbourne at the SDA Masterclass. And we look forward to hearing more about what you do and having you collaborate with all the speakers at the event as well.
Yes, thank you kindly. And again, thank you so much to yourself and Deb for educating the entire industry. I mean, educating me as well. I just have not come across another platform or sincere group of people that really do care, really are trying to, much like myself, trying to pioneer the industry and trailblaze it in a way that provides uplift and support for everyone in that process.
Thank you, Sean. I think there are lots of people out there in the SDA world who think like us, and it would be great if we could collaborate with them more around Australia, because the greater the leadership in SDA grows and the experience and knowledge begins, that we can obviously help.
And that's a key discerning difference. It's just being mindful and reflective of the people that are coming into these spaces. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, really. That's ultimately the end comment. And so, to give back to this part of society that's often forgotten about is the most rewarding thing as a person out of anything I can do within my own skill set, if that makes sense. It warms my heart to walk into these homes and seeing participants interact with the space. And for me, it makes those long hours, those stressful moments, the reflection point of, at times, of why I even do this. That's the moment. That's the moment where I'm like, thank you. It feels good as a person to be doing that.
My final pearls of wisdom for this episode is advice for everyone listening who is a professional. That is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Oh man, could almost bring a tear to my eye. I agree wholeheartedly. Honestly.
Thank you, Sean. Have a good afternoon, eh?
Yeah, thank you, mate. And like I said, if I could, I'd pat you on the back. So thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.